In 1989, Nintendo released their first 8-bit handheld system. This beloved gray brick was an icon of the early 90s. The screen may have been difficult to see, and the games were much more basic than what home consoles could produce at the time, but that didn't stop the Game Boy from having its fair share of classics. Kids of the early 90s were playing Tetris, Pokemon, Kirby, and Mario's first handheld experience, Super Mario Land. Welcome back to Berdante's Game Room. I'm Braden, and today we've got a double header. I just played through Super Mario Land and Super Mario Land 2, the 6 golden coins, on the RetroArch emulator. These games have their place in history, but are they worth your time today? Let's find out.
The Martians are coming! Yes, and Mario is your only hope. Team up with him in Super Mario Land. Guide him on the Nintendo Game Boy. Challenge the mysteries and terrors of ancient Egypt. Battle all the horrors of the deep. Master lots of weird worlds to give Mario a happy ending and make your world a better place. Super Mario Land and other exciting games for Game Boy. Nintendo, now you're playing with power. Portable power.
Super Mario Land. This game and I go way back. I'm a late 90s kid, so I wasn't around when this game came out, but my aunt was. She gave me her original Game Boy with a copy of the iconic Tetris and a copy of Super Mario Land. I played this game quite a bit when I was younger, but I never beat it. This playthrough, I'm determined to change that. Let's explore Mario's first outing on the Game Boy. On boot up, you're presented with a high score and a start option. That's it. This is typical for the Game Boy. On the screen now is footage from my playthrough, which again was done on the RetroArch emulator. I played with a wireless 8-bit DOE Super Nintendo controller, which is similar to the controls of the original Game Boy. In Super Mario Land, you play as the plumber himself and explore ancient ruins, fight giant crabs, Koopa Troopas, Easter Island heads, and a bunch of other strange creatures. These creatures and the adventure is showing off very well in the commercial for the game. The gameplay is mostly traditional platforming levels, but there's some when you're flying or underwater. The platforming shares a lot of similarities with the original Super Mario Bros. On NES. I actually prefer the underwater levels in Super Mario Land in comparison to Super Mario Bros., as instead of swimming, Mario has a sub that he can shoot enemies with. There's similarity in the power-ups as well. In Super Mario Land, you can get the mushroom, you can get the fire flower, you can get a star for invincibility, and you can get extra lives by collecting hearts. If you get 100 coins, you also get an extra life for that. At the end of each world, there's a boss fight and a fake princess waiting for you once you defeat them. This is another similarity to Super Mario Bros. On NES. There are some secrets hidden throughout the levels as well. You can find them by going down certain pipes or by finding hidden blocks. These secrets lead to a boatload of coins. As far as difficulty is concerned, Super Mario Land isn't very hard. I ran through the levels pretty easily, and I appreciated the underwater or flying levels. They were a great change of pace, and I ended up beating the game in 29 minutes. Once you beat the game, you can play through it again and try to beat your score. There's not a lot of content for Super Mario World, but that's kind of how it was at the time, especially with it being a very early Game Boy release. I can appreciate simplicity, and the game runs decently too. To give Super Mario Land a score out of 10, we have to set the stage. We can't compare it to modern platformers. We can't even compare it to platformers on the Game Boy Color. We have to compare it to platformers that were out at the time. So that would be the NES and other Game Boy platformers. I know for a fact that there's better platformers on the original Game Boy, but again, this one is hard to rate given it was so early in the Game Boy's lifespan. All of that being considered, I would give Super Mario Land a 5 out of 10. It's a fun little adventure from the early Game Boy years that you can beat in a half hour. If you love platformers and wanted to see how far they've come, it may be worth giving it a playthrough, but it's not one that you're going to go back to all the time. One playthrough should be enough. This is not the end of the story though. 3 years later there was a sequel. Super Mario Land 2, 6 golden coins.
Obey me, Wario. I am your master. Mario is your enemy.
The wicked imposter Wario has cast an evil spell over Mario Land.
Don't let Mario get the 6 golden coins. Don't let Mario reach the palace.
This is the biggest, most dangerous, most challenging Game Boy adventure yet.
Obey Wario. Destroy Mario.
Don't fall under Wario's evil spell in Super Mario Land 2, only on Game Boy.
As you can already see by the gameplay up on the screen, there is a night and day difference between the original Super Mario Land and Super Mario Land 2. We compared Super Mario Land to the original Super Mario Bros. On NES. A good comparison for Super Mario Land 2 would be Super Mario Bros. 3, although much simplified. You could also make comparisons to Super Mario World on the Super Nintendo. It is amazing to see how far they could push the original Game Boy hardware. In Super Mario Land 2, you are tasked with collecting the 6 golden coins. These coins are hidden in 6 different worlds. To access these worlds, you need to traverse a world map. Something very cool about this game is that you can do any worlds in any order. This adds replayability right from the start of the game. There is much more content here than the original Super Mario Land. There's secret levels in this one as well, similar to something you would see in Super Mario World on the Super Nintendo. Another thing this game has over the original Super Mario Land is more power-ups. In this game we have the mushroom, fire flower, and the turnip. The turnip gives you wings, and let me tell you, this power-up is unbelievable. You can pretty much fly over some stages with this thing. If you mash the A button, you can stay up in the air for so long. My wireless Super Nintendo controller had a turbo option, so I tested it, and if you use turbo, you can indefinitely stay in the air. So if you're a masher, I think you could just fly forever in Super Mario Land 2. This is a very fun power-up to use. As far as level design goes, they're varied, and you can expect to see different enemies in each world. There's some interesting gimmicks in some of the levels, and some of them you just run to the right and the level's done. There's a good mix here, but nothing groundbreaking. There's a checkpoint system that the game uses, so if you make it to a certain distance in a level and then die, it will just restart you there. It's worth mentioning that one of the worlds is hidden and has a space theme. Because you're in space, the gravity is different, so you jump higher and slower. That's a good way to keep the game mechanics fresh. I was also a big fan of the spooky world because I like that kind of stuff. The last stage in every world has a boss fight. Some of these are better than others, but none really stood out until the final boss of the game. Once you have explored the 6 worlds and collected the 6 golden coins, it's time for the final level. Up until this point I might have lost a few lives here and there, but it's been pretty easy. All of that changes once you get to Wario's Castle. Wario's Castle is a gauntlet of platforming challenges and traps. You have to dodge spike balls, fireballs, lava pits, Wario fists, Wario balls, and this level has no checkpoints. If you manage to make it through this, you're greeted with the final boss, the big yellow evil Mario himself, Wario. It took me quite a few tries to learn the layout of the castle and get to Wario. This was a very abrupt change in difficulty from the rest of the game, which I'll admit was kind of frustrating. While running Wario's castle over and over again, I began to get better and better at the game, which is something the rest of the game did not require me to do. Back to Wario, this is probably the best boss fight in the game. You have to beat Wario 3 times. He has 3 different phases, sort of like Dracula in Castlevania. You beat the first phase, and then you fight him again and again, and he changes his moves in each phase. In the first phase, Wario is just jumping around trying to drop potions on you. Jump on his head a few times and he runs away. He happens to have a turnip behind his throne, so you grab it and run into the next room. Well, it turns out he got a turnip too, so he's flying around now, and you have to do the same thing, jump on his head 3 times. Once you do that, you go to the next room, and Wario gets a fire flower. I think it's pretty cool that he uses the power-ups that you've been using throughout the whole game. He beat me pretty good a few times, but once you learn the pattern, you can jump on his head right as he's coming out of hit stun from your previous hit. This makes the battle much easier. Once I learned that, I beat Wario without a problem, and that was the end of Super Mario Land 2, the 6 golden coins. I think it's very apparent by the footage I'm showing of Super Mario Land and Super Mario Land 2 that the second game is superior in every way, except for maybe one. Some of the music was better in the original Super Mario Land compared to Super Mario Land 2. I know the Game Boy isn't really known for producing memorable music, but I think that's the only category the first Super Mario Land wins in. Super Mario Land 2 gives you a world map to explore in any order that you choose, 6 completely different worlds with their own unique identities, much improved boss fights from the first game, better power-ups, and much better graphics. Again, incredible to see how much they were able to squeeze out of the Game Boy console. I'll give Super Mario Land 2 a score just like I did for Super Mario Land 1. We're still not at the point where it would be a game you could keep coming back to once you played it, but I would give this a 6.5 out of 10 when compared to the rest of the Game Boy library and the other games that were out at the time. There's much more going on here than the original Super Mario Land, but it's not platforming excellence yet. And that's the story of Super Mario's origins on handheld consoles. Super Mario Land and Super Mario Land 2 are iconic when you talk about the Game Boy. They go hand in hand with it. If you had a Game Boy in the early 90s, you most definitely had a copy of Super Mario Land. It was also pretty likely that you had a copy of Super Mario Land 2. To be able to take a platformer like this on the go, powered by batteries, it would have been quite the experience. Nowadays, with so many platformers, with so much more content, it's hard for me to recommend playing these. To the big Mario fans, you have to play through them once. They're so short, it's worth doing. For other people looking for great platformers to get into, I think you can safely skip these pieces of history. Gaming has come a long way since Super Mario Land and Super Mario Land 2, but we still have to appreciate them for what they were. And like always, thank you for tuning in to Berdante's Game Room.